by Minimizer, Blooming Prairie, Minnesota. Minimizer was formed more than 30 years ago when truck driver Dick Kruckerberg literally invented the poly fender.
These are the first blueprints of my fenders 25 years ago.
Fast forward 3 decades, and Minimizer makes a variety of aftermarket truck products. Blooming Prairie continues to serve as company headquarters because Minimizer is committed to its hometown and the success of the community as a whole.
Once in a love song.
So we're here with the Where's Mark segment, and we are with the Fenske family. And I'm going to have you go down the line and introduce yourself. You are?
I'm Sam.
Sam, what's your last name?
Fenske.
All right, and you're?
I'm John, same last name.
Same last name?
I'm Marcy.
Marcy.
Jacob.
Jacob. And Marcy, you're the one that's kind of the star of the show this week. Something I think Shakespeare said that, you know, some people are born to greatness, others have it thrust upon them. And you're becoming a spokeswoman for your generation of women that are worried and scared and don't know what to do. But Marcy, I believe with all my heart you're going to come through on the other side, and you're going to take a lot of them with you. Cancer has won too many battles, and it's about time we started taking some things back. So what I want to do is I kind of want to go back to a little bit about you two, especially John and Marcy. How'd you guys meet?
Do you want me to say?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I was in the Army. I was in flight school in Alabama, and I got a whole summer off between a certain amount of training and then the flight school portion of it. And so I went back to my hometown in Redwood Falls, Minnesota, and Marcy was a social worker there, so we spent some time together and got married, or got engaged, and we got married while I was still in flight school, and spent maybe 6 months together while I wrapped up flight school, and we got assigned to Fort Wainwright, Alaska, and that's where we started our family, and 2 of our 3 kids were born there.
In Alaska.
Yep.
Oh, that's awesome.
And then left the Army and came to Owatonna
20 years
a few years, 20 years ago. I started working for Federated.
And what do you do for Federated, John?
I work in the claims department.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Been here in Owatonna for 20 years.
And Marcy, you met John. He was in the Army, or just out of the Army.
in the Army.
In the Army, and you're a social worker, and you see this big guy with his Army uniform on. What do you think?
Well, actually, his mom introduced us. I worked with his mom up at the office that I worked at as a social worker, and fell in love with him.
Thank God for moms, huh?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, Sam, are you kind of working that takes the same route for you, that your mom is going to be instrumental in finding you your soulmate?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
Where do you go to school, Sam?
Minnesota State University, Mankato.
Really?
Yep.
And Adam Phelan following there, I hear.
Yep. I've seen him a couple times at some restaurants and stuff.
Yeah. Do you play football there?
No, I do not.
Okay. Just going to get your education, right?
Yep.
All right. That sounds great. And Jacob, big boy over here on the right. Where do you go to school?
I graduated a couple of years ago from Minnesota, Twin Cities. So.
Okay. What, Minnesota, from the University of Minnesota?
Yep.
Did you do any athletics up there?
I threw shot put. So
Yeah, I know you guys were pretty instrumental here in the Owatonna program, correct?
Yeah, we had a couple of good years there, a couple of good guys, good friends.
Good. So I'm going to ask you first, Jacob. How did you first hear the news?
We had just been in Alaska visiting the middle brother who lives up there now, and came back, and I guess my mom knew before that and just didn't tell us, so we would still enjoy our time up there, and kind of came home and went back to my apartment and kind of was going about my day on that Sunday, and I just got out of the gym and had a call from my mom, and she asked if like where I was and if I could be alone, and she called and told me, and I was just crying in my car for a little while. It's tough. But.
Yeah, it's a rough thing to get that kind of a call. Sam, where were you when it happened?
Just like you said, we had gotten back from Alaska, and I still had a day before I had to go back to Mankato to my job. And I think I was downstairs, and my mom called me upstairs and said, "Hey, I want to talk to you." And my mom and dad were both sitting on the couch, and I knew something was up because that doesn't happen very often. I think it's happened twice before. Once was when I was in the principal's office in junior high, and the other was when my grandpa had cancer, so I knew something was up. And they told me, and I just kind of took the news in, and I called my older brothers and talked to them about it.
How'd that turn out with the principal, by the way?
It was all good.
It was all good, and you got through it?
Yep.
Well, let me tell you something, Sam. It's going to be all good here too. This is going to be just fine. I'm believing with everything that's inside of me that the energy and the prayers that have been offered up for your mom, that's no light thing here. We've got a community that's going to stand by all of you. John, when did you hear? When did you hear?
Well, we had come back. I had been gone for 2 weeks, and we came back on a Saturday really late at night, and Marcy picked us up. And I had a whole bunch of work piled up, I knew. So we probably got back to our house, I don't know, it was after midnight. And I said, well, I've got to get in right away to start working on stuff, and she let me do that. And so I did that until maybe, I don't know, early afternoon, and then she said, hey, I want to go tell you something. So we drove over to our church. And
what church did you go to, John?
We go to Bethel Church here in Montana. And she told me that in the parking lot, and that, obviously is, it's kind of difficult news to process, but I was like, well, why didn't you tell me right away? Why didn't you call me when I was still up there? And she said, well, I didn't want to spoil your trip. And, that's pretty much, once I thought about it, that's kind of how she does things. So, pretty selfless, I think. And so then from there, it's just like, well, let's get on with the medical stuff and find out, what the situation is and what the objective things are, and what has to be done. And at that point, that was probably that was maybe August 1st, and from then until now, it's pretty much just been, how we've been going.
One of the things that happens, and we're going to get to you here in just a second, Marcy, but from doing my homework on you, this is classic you. Picking the right moment to tell your sons, picking the right moment to tell your husband, worrying more about them than you are about yourself, the selflessness that you have, and the care that you have for people around you. I mean, the heart of a social worker always. Something that you probably had since you were an early child. This compassion that you have for other people. And so, Marcy, take us back to how you found out.
Right before, my husband, like you said, was up in Alaska visiting our other son, and he had been up there for a week, and Jake and Sam were going to go outside to bring him to the airport. And a couple days before that, I found a lump in my breast, and I needed to get them to the airport first, and then I called to try to get into the doctor, and I finally was able to get in on a Monday, so I dropped him off on a Friday, and they said, well, you need to, yep, you have a lump, and we need to have a mammogram and ultrasound. I ended up going over to Rochester because I couldn't get in here quick enough for me, and so I waited about 4 days for the results of the mammogram, and then they actually took a biopsy that day. So it was on a Friday. I had gone to have a pedicure after work to take my mind off things, and I got a call from the local doctor here, Mail had called back to the local doctor, and he told me on the phone that indeed what they biopsied was cancer. We know nothing else. I then called a very dear friend of mine on the way home from having the pedicure, and she came over to my house. She didn't know what was wrong because I couldn't talk, and she came in and told her, and she prayed with me and stayed with me the next 5 hours. So after that, there was more testing done, and what I found out was I had stage 3 invasive ductal carcinoma, and it had invaded my lymph nodes, and it was the level 1, 2, and 3, so it was going towards my collarbone.
Let me go back to when you first got the call from the doctor. You're all by yourself. Of course, you send your husband and your kids off because you didn't want to stand in the way of what they were going to do.
I didn't know any of this at the time. John had already been in Alaska for a week, and it was right before I took these two to the airport that I found the lump.
Sure.
So I didn't know for sure, but I just knew I probably needed to get in and make sure it wasn't cancer. It was hopefully a cyst.
Right. And the doctor gets on the phone with you, and you get the news. I mean, when it first comes out of somebody else's mouth concerning you, how do you process that? What?
I felt like my whole life just was at a standstill, and you don't think it's going to ever be you. My dad died of cancer. Had friends who have, but you don't think it's going to be you that has it. But I will say this, I have a strong faith. And I've told people I'm a woman of faith and daughter of the King who promises to walk with me through this whole thing. So I know I put my trust in him, and he takes me through this, and at times he's had to carry me through, and it's the faith community and the prayers. I know that has, not just me, but our whole family has gotten us through that.
So when you did get the news, did you feel an overwhelming presence of the Lord at that point? Pretty much just kind
yes.
of almost like an adrenaline shot from God.
Yeah. And when my friend came over, who's a believer, and she prayed with me, that really calmed me down.
Right. And so after she prayed with you, how'd you feel? What were you thinking?
Lots of things. Your mind goes.
Yeah.
I knew it would be okay because my trust is in him.
Mm-hmm.
But your mind goes to the worst possible case scenario,
and so you carried it pretty much by yourself then until your family got home. That's got to be brutal, carrying something like that when they're not there. And you told John first, of course,
yes.
Before you told the children. How did you go about figuring out how to tell the kids?
Well, I was pretty surprised. My first thought when she said, we got to go say something, I said, well, are you finally leaving me? I thought maybe she was just she had had enough of me, and she said, no, that's not it, I need you right now. And then after that, I thought I was really numb. I just didn't know how to process it, and part of it was being on the heels of a really long trip. I'd never been gone that long before, but you never expect to hear something like that. And we prayed together, and I said, from my perspective, it was like, when can we find out more information? And in the first few days, it was like, well, where are we going to get the information? There was a little bit of uncertainty on that. And then it's, how are you going to tell the kids? And, I didn't really know what to think. You know, I really, literally, like, you know, the old cliche, I was kind of numb.
Right.
But I was.
I had it planned
Yeah.
how we needed.
Yeah.
You had a little more time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I had people praying. Two people,
Yeah.
two
Right.
girlfriends.
And I was a pastor for over 30 years, so I've had many cases where I've had these counseling sessions, and you deal with so many different things here. You deal with the set of the tangible and the intangible.
Yep.
And those things that are so totally different all of a sudden get mixed up.
Yeah.
And you get the emotion coming from one side, and you run the gamut. You run the gamut of and John, most likely you're probably like, well, I wish I would have been there, and why wasn't I there? And
I thought a lot of that. Yeah,
Yeah.
I did. I said, you know, I was like, well, why didn't you call me? And then I knew, well, she wouldn't call me, you know, because I would have come home sooner, and it was, you know, a few days. And I thought, well, that's how she needed to, that's part of her, and how she needed to let us know.
how she processed it.
Yeah, and then I processed it pretty quickly, and it was, you know, I have strong faith, but I knew we needed to just get information.
Sure.
And there was already a schedule for that.
Mm-hmm.
So by the time I came home, it was already kind of put down what we were going to do. We were going to go to Mayo this day or that day, and then it was just a matter of waiting on results, and those were difficult. You know, there was some apprehension, but I was always really confident that things would go the way they have so far. So.
Kind of like the Army, stand in line and wait.
Right, there was a lot of
And you
that.
get to the next one and you stand in line and you wait.
That's a really good analogy. It was a lot like that. You know, I'm still, honestly, if you talk to me a year from now, I'd maybe have better answers, but I'm still kind of in that fog of, since it started, it hasn't really, I haven't had a chance to really sit down and discern what went on and what happened, and I will.
Yeah. It's kind of like with flight school with you. You didn't actually get behind the wheel until it was time for you to fly.
Right.
And it's the same thing here. God didn't put you into this situation until you were absolutely ready to handle it. Now, we look at situations like this from a spiritual aspect, and a lot of people say, well, why did God allow this to happen? Why did God allow this to happen to me? And you think to yourself, when I was out in New York a couple of weeks ago and I was interviewing, last year I interviewed the hero from 9/11, and I did the story on him, and one of the things he said was he sat in the church and God spoke to him and said, you know, all your life you've asked me what my purpose is, and here you are standing right in front of it, and here he was standing in front of the pile on 9/11. And if a man or a woman can find his or her purpose standing in front of the crisis, it'll change not only your heart, but it'll also change your perspective. So what kind of changes has this brought on?
I don't take a day for granted. I just told Jake this the other day. Every morning I get up, I thank God that I have air in my lungs, and I say, thank you, God, for giving me another day. And this is the day that the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. And I say that almost every morning. So I just don't, none of us are promised tomorrow.
No.
Nobody is.
But you realize that you may be the one that God's chosen to go through, and to go through with victory. For all those that are going to come after you, people that are watching this by videotape saying, oh dear God, what are we going to do now? And you guys have cut the swath and cleared the way, and you've got answers for people who don't know God. They have no faith. I can't imagine going through something like this without Him. Your faith, I know, is sustaining both of you. Now, let's back up a little bit again. When we go back to what was the doctor's, after his diagnosis, how quickly did they want to act?
Fairly quickly.
Yeah, they had a plan. It was almost like a rote, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but it was, and that was, I took that as good news. That it's like they said, well, this is, once they had done all these tests, and there was some apprehension with the tests. You know, they did PET scans to see where it'd be, but once they knew that the PET scans were, it was isolated, and they knew where it was, and when they said we've got a plan and we're going to cure you, when they started using the word cure, I felt really comfortable. But they said, you know, it would start right away, and it did. I mean, it wasn't a week that I had been back. I think it was a few days that they did the surgical deal to put in a port and to administer the chemo. So it was a few days. And then they waited. Once the port was in, it might have been a week before they administered chemo.
Sure.
But throughout, you know, they were so confident. The medical providers were just incredible. They knew exactly what they were going to do, and they had expectations, so there'd be apprehension from my perspective at least. I don't speak for you, but
Well, the good thing about that is they're almost clinical in what they do.
yeah, they conveyed a sense of confidence that this is what it is, this is what we're going to do, this is going to happen, and you know, they were right throughout. And I know it's not. And they told us right away that cancer does what cancer wants to do, and there's no absolutes. But, you know, you just start clinging towards the positives.
Right. And Marcy, when they did the surgery, they took the tumor, they took lymph nodes, correct?
I actually had a double mastectomy.
Okay, so they took both breasts and they took the lymph nodes. And did they find cancer in the lymph nodes at all?
There was cancer in the lymph nodes, and when they took them, they found the shell of, I don't know how to explain it, but
Yeah, they had to take like 23 lymph nodes, but there was no cancer.
No
There was
cancer.
evidence that there had been cancer.
and then that the chemo
So the chemo
had killed it.
had really done a great job, which was what we've been praying for.
We know better. We know what cured her. We know what God used, and the idea that evidence that there was sickness in the body and it's no longer there, that's got to be a good feeling, to know that His hand had been upon you during that whole surgery. So the prognosis now going forward, Marcy.
I think it's very good, and I had proton radiation after that, and
That was pretty hard.
which was probably actually the hardest of the whole treatment for me.
They had to bolt her face to a table in a mask, or put her face in a mask that was bolted to a table every day.
But I had people praying for me again throughout that whole thing. But so it looks.
And then there's
really,
another surgery. December.
What is the other surgery?
It's a reconstruction surgery.
Okay. But they want to make sure you're cancer-free before that, correct? Have they declared you cancer-free yet?
Well, yeah, they did.
Yeah, I believe.
Yeah, and now there's the every 3 months.
Sure.
But
You know, for a lot of people, that's the waiting game, and it's a dastardly disease, in that it always makes you look over your shoulder, wondering if it's coming back.
that's what a lot of her questions have been. You know, where might it come back?
Yeah.
And you know, they've given away those places where it may. But you know, I look at it as, but it's relatively unlikely that it will. And
Yeah. So, Marcy, have you returned to work
Yes, I actually worked throughout
throughout
all the treatments.
Oh, that's amazing. That's amazing.
she didn't miss many days. I think the only, other than the treatment days, I think you missed 2. I think you took 2 days off until her surgery.
Yeah.
And then, you know, so through chemo, 2 days, and then surgery was 6 weeks.
But I have incredible co-workers.
Sure. Well, I think that speaks volumes to not only your husband but to your children, who probably will think twice if they want to call in sick for work, knowing that that probably won't happen anymore.
Well, I fall into that category too. I was like,
Yeah.
there were some days I didn't feel that great, and she was going to work, and I thought, well, I better too.
Yeah.
When the flu bug's going around or whatever, and you're feeling a little down. Well, she had been through really difficult treatments.
Sure. And I think, this disease, it cloaks itself. It just comes out of nowhere.
It does.
And it tries to bring terror. Fear brings terror. But that perfect love casts out all that fear. And the great thing about it is that if it can't scare you with the end result, which is death, then it can't scare you with the disease.
Amen to that.
Yeah, we know how we know how this all ends.
Yeah.
We know that
I know where I'm going, and it's to a better place.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Yeah.
And my mom had said this to me, she's 82 years old, and she said, Marcy, you know what? God already knew this was going to happen. He already knew this, that He knows what's going to happen from here on out.
Yeah.
So I rest in that.
I think God recruited, it cost you something, but I think God recruited somebody that was worth something here. He got a pretty good social worker out of the deal here that's now going to go forward. And one of these days, Marcy, you're going to be able to sit across the table from a young woman or a young man, and they're going to say, you don't know what I'm going through, and you're going to say, I do know what you're going through. So it's so much easier to counsel and to bring that peace when you've already walked that trail and you've already gotten through it. And I think, how powerful is that for such a time as this, that you were brought to this in this way. And I always like to say, Lord, don't you think it's a little radical? And God said, I know what I'm doing. And although we don't, He does. But I think there are going to be so many hundreds and maybe thousands that are going to be touched by your testimony and by your strength and by your family unit. I can see that one of the most horrible things about even thinking about dying would be leaving this beautiful family behind. That would be the hardest thing. And I think now, at first I looked at you and I thought maybe the tears were fear, but they're not fear-based. Those tears are love-based, and how much you love your family, and how grateful you are for each day that you've been given, going forward one day at a time.
Right, that's true. And honestly, the most difficult thing in this whole thing has been that we have one more son who's not here. We were up visiting.
And his name is?
Peter. And he's in the Alaska State Trooper Academy right now, and he graduates here in a month. And we're going up to see him for his graduation, and it's going to be great. But he's been a part of this throughout, and just 3,000 miles away.
Yeah.
And we really miss Pete.
Yeah.
And it's our community, I need to say this, has people we know, people we don't know. It's overwhelming. That's where a lot of tears are. It's just overwhelming, the support. And we need to put that forward now too. But to be on that side, to receive is...
Exactly. Well, you've got a Peter, a Samuel, and a Jacob.
Yeah.
You've got an apostle, you've got a prophet, and you've got a patriarch in your family, and you raised them well. And you can see God's love all over you guys, and it's just amazing, just a testimony that you guys have here. I believe that going forward, you are going to be the ones that people are going to look to, and you don't realize it now, but there's going to be many that are going to come knocking at your door saying, help me through this. And I'll ask you right now, do you have the strength to do that?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Well, I'll tell you, this is a special time for you. And how has, From the Heart helped you, Marcy?
I've been a part of From the Heart as a volunteer almost from the first one that started. It's a great group who started this, their committee. And they're very supportive.
It's just amazing, Marcy, when you think that you've been involved with this since the beginning, and here it is, the 9th year. You never thought that you'd be on this side.
I'm
on
usually
this
up
side
handing
of
out bags.
it. Yeah.
When they called, she thought it was a little early to call to organize the volunteers, because she thought that's when they would call them. And then when they mentioned about being a recipient, I think it took a lot of discussion, a lot of thought, a lot of prayer.
You don't feel worthy.
Right. That's been the biggest
Yeah,
thing. I mean, there are so many people who need help, and probably more so than we do. And you don't want to take away from. And I can think of several people right now that are battling a battle, and you don't want to take away from them.
I think God needed his champion to come front and center. I don't think this was thrust upon you just by a committee. I think this was by divine appointment that you guys are where you are and sitting where you are today. There's a calling here that you can't refute and you can't deny. And Marcy, maybe, you go through your lives and you think, well, we're going through our lives, we're living a Christian existence, God, what are we supposed to be doing? Well, again, here you're standing in front of your pile, standing in front of your 9/11, and realizing that this was your call to stand here and to be strong for so many others. I see tremendous strength coming from you guys. I know that From the Heart has chosen you, but like I said, I think that was a divine appointment that you're where you are, sitting on the other side of the table this year. But isn't that part of what you've always wanted to do, Marcy, is I want to feel it all. I want to experience it all. I want to know what it's like. When you sit across from people that are hurting, you want to know what they're feeling like. And if you could change places with them for just a moment, you could, just to find out how bad the hurt is, how bad the damage is. You're experiencing. They say be careful what you wish for. And this is exactly where you are. And what an honor, what a privilege that a daughter of the King was sent to this position. And you guys should be in awe of your mom and your dad and what they were called to. It's just special. Marcy, if you got something you're looking out at, somebody that's watching this on video, and perhaps there's a young lady or a young man that's watching, and they really need to be ministered to, what would you tell them?
Tell them you can do this. You are stronger than you think. I would tell them rely on your faith. God will take you through this. He will take you through it.
My wife always says if he sees you, if he brings you to it, he'll see you through it. My wife is one of those two that you can't ever talk my wife out of her faith. I mean, and I think you and my wife are probably cut from about the same cloth. So it's a very special thing. So those that are listening by internet or on closed circuit TV, I want to let you know that what she's saying is not just her words, but she's coming and speaking something from someplace far away. And God has given somebody a word today. I believe that's an encouragement. And John, you represent, the families. A lot of times the caregivers are the ones that they get overlooked and they get, kind of stepped on and forgotten about. And you want to tell something give a word of encouragement to the caregivers.
Yeah, you can do it. I was fortunate at Marcy's urging. We got a puppy after her diagnosis, and we love the puppy.
Okay,
We
wait a
all
minute,
love
Sam's over here with his head
We
down.
all love
What's
the
that all
puppy.
about, Sam?
I don't know. I don't think she likes it as much.
She doesn't
as we
like
all
the puppy
think.
as much.
Yeah, cut this one out.
Yeah, you can maybe edit this out.
He's a jokester.
I
so.
do love the puppy. The puppy has, actually for me, I mean, this is being selfish, but the puppy did help me. And I didn't have to walk the walk she walked. I had the easy part of it. But I will say this, I did have in fact, there were people in town and at my work that they were so supportive that I almost felt like, well, hey, it's not me. I don't have cancer. My wife does. But then as we got going into it, I was like, okay, I see why I'm getting all this support I was, because it is a little difficult being a spouse, and it's just us two now, and we had just recently become empty nesters, so we were still kind of sorting that out. And
When you get there, let me know. Our last son is graduating this year from Blooming
Yeah.
Prairie, so
well, it took us a little while to figure out what to do, but actually when you're talking about 9/11, that was kind of ironic because we just started to go do things, and we'd gone to New York and gone to the 9/11 museum and to a few other things that you would do, whatever tourist things there were, and we're kind of feeling our way through that, and then this kind of came and hit us, or at least hit me in the face. I assume it hit Marcy in the face more than me. I've always had the easier orator role. She's got the laboring or whatever you'd say.
I can imagine though, John, and I'm really feeling this from the Spirit of the Lord. There were some moments there where they would wheel her away from you, or you'd be sitting in a room all by yourself, and there would be a tremendous loneliness and a tremendous darkness that would try to come upon you.
We're still working through that, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, everything's different.
A new normal.
Yeah, but I think, we're getting to where we need to be. For a long time, it's like the thing that, at least from my perspective, what occupies your thoughts is it's all medical. Let's beat this. But there's more to it than the medical part of it. There's the emotional, spiritual side of it.
That's right.
And, I think that's what we've got to get back to now, and I think we will.
Not taking anything for granted.
No.
Realizing that every day is more.
Every day, and we still have so many friends, I don't want to mention any names,
Right.
but, well, I will. I'll mention a name, you can edit it out, but I'm praying an awful lot for Dan Felsen and his family right now. And, Dan's been battling cancer for about 10 years, and you couldn't ask for a better guide or person to set an example for. And I know he's having some tough days right now, and he's been in my prayers. And there's other people too that are in worse spots, and you think about those too. So.
And Jacob, how's this going to change you going forward?
Maybe just think a lot more about things I'm doing day to day, or even I don't know. Getting out of college, you kind of feel invincible, and maybe still do a little bit, but it kind of takes you back and makes you realize that my mom was telling me before, every day is a blessing, and it's important not to just kind of float through life. The people that love you and.
So this little speed bump for your mom kind of took the wind out of your sails so that you wouldn't sail through life. And I think that's very important. Sam, same thing with you. How's it changed you going forward?
Just like my mom said, you're never guaranteed tomorrow, so just kind of don't take life for granted, I guess. I know that I definitely have grown in my faith throughout this whole 4 or 5 month course, but yeah.
That's awesome. Well, it has been a pleasure to meet with you. It's an honor to meet with you both and all 4 of you. And I just know that God's got a plan in all of this. He has a purpose. You know, I think of the scripture that I'm hearing so strong in my spirit right now is Jeremiah 29:11 for you. That he says, I know the plans that I have for you. And things of good things and not of destruction. And for this family, I believe that, you know, Jeremiah 29:11, 12, and 13 and 14, all of those verses right in there. Go ahead and take a look at another hard look at that and realize, boy, what you're about ready to do, you guys, is going to be so exciting. All I can tell you is buckle up. Buckle up. It's about ready to take off.
There you go.
You're a team that's called to ministry, and that's, I believe, where God's heading with you.
The rainbow way up high in the land that I heard of